All right, here we go. Let's go live. And we are live. Well, folks, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Weather Center Live. It is March 19th, 2024. Weather Center Live on Tuesday, March 19th, 2024. We have quite a bit to talk about tonight. I won't say an abundance of things to talk about tonight, but we have quite an interesting phenomena to talk about, to include some things that are after this potential cyclone that we're seeing maybe spin up in the central to upper Gulf of Mexico. We're going to start off with some familiar charts of the United States, the lower 48. We'll get a better idea of what it is that we're looking at, and then we'll dig into some very familiar charts reminiscent of last hurricane season, because we're still seeing signals that shouldn't be there this time of year, but they are. Let's go ahead and say hello to some folks. Braden's WC, I do see you up there. Thanks again for the very, very kind words. Biggest fan and supporter. Well, that means a lot. Thank you very much for joining us. Scrooge McDuck, I've been looking forward to the live on this. Very interested to hear your analysis. I'm very interested to talk about it, trust me, because right now, if I'm being totally honest, the only thing that very, very interests me with this system is the fact that we have other signals that shouldn't be there being highlighted for this storm. Otherwise, I'm really not too concerned about a major severe outbreak or anything really significant happening with it just yet. And we'll talk about that. It's really going to come down to where this system tracks, how organized it will get, how far to the north or how far to the south it develops, where its projected window of movement. We're going to look at, like I said, some very familiar tools that some of my long-time subscribers are very, very up to speed with. And they're honestly low-key getting me a little excited too, because I miss looking at these kind of things. But all right, folks, let's go ahead and dig in. So this is where we sit currently. We had a cold blast, as everyone has mentioned, and truthfully, there was a lot of hype surrounding this cold blast. Everyone was talking, even some people on the X, the Twitter, were mentioning, winter's not over, winter's gonna come back, and everyone's gonna freeze, and it was cold out, don't get me wrong, but this is definitely not a signal that winter's not over, that spring hasn't arrived yet. It has most definitely arrived, and these random stints of cooler, colder weather are 100% natural as we round out the back end of transition season, and today is the first official calendar day of spring, so it makes sense we're still getting some cool air mixed in every now and again. And I looked at all the National Weather Service observations across the country earlier this afternoon around, I think, like 5:30, 6 o'clock, and everybody out there is in the upper 50s, the 60s, even the 70s, getting into the Central Plains, the Appalachians, up towards the Midwest. So we're still fairly mild out there. There were a lot of folks even hyping that it would potentially be Arctic air, and it's like, where are you guys getting that from? There's no Arctic air anywhere. And that right there, this right here, guys, is what I'm really looking at to help determine whether or not we're going to get severe weather with this. Because some folks would naturally immediately believe that there's going to be severe weather associated with this system. However, I want to tell you about the source regions. So think about it. If we have this maritime continental polar high pressure that's rotating through here, you kind of have to think about it as a force field. We have all of our maritime tropical air down towards the south and all of our warmer temps down in this quadrant of the Caribbean, the west central Atlantic. So under here, we're underneath a bubble or a dome of cold air, as they'd like to say, as one of my mentors back in Air Force weather used to say. So if I start the clock and we begin to move, notice that air mass kind of hangs out. We go out to 48 hours, and we still have some residual effects of high pressure just off the coast, still providing us with a little bit of cooler, drier air across the Bahamas, the Florida Peninsula, and the southeast United States, Mississippi, Alabama, parts of Georgia, and the Carolinas, with another high pressure up to the north here. So we have a stationary boundary draped right in through here somewhere. So we still have some very, very modified continental polar air and then some bona fide continental polar air here, with our storm system beginning to develop over Texas, the textbook border of the West Gulf of Mexico. And as a result, we're underneath very, very modified environmental conditions. We don't have a textbook warm conveyor out ahead of it and a very, very pungent warm or a cold conveyor back behind it. So you take this through time a little bit further. We got to 72 hours, and there you have it. And I do believe this is why The Euro is doing some very, very interesting things with these. Wow, I'm hungry, guys. I feel bad for breaking into the discussion just by saying that, but this entire time I've been briefing, I literally just feel whoa the entire time. But anyways, so as you can see, we don't really have a substantial area of conflict, as we like to put it on this channel. We don't have a cold conveyor. We don't really have a dry conveyor. We don't have a warm conveyor. It's just this low-pressure cyclone, this entity right here, and that's what I'm going to call it. It's an entity because there's some very strange signals on our models, and we'll get into them. And even this latest iteration of the European model has it more or less diverging. It almost looks like we have an area of low pressure that wants to swing through southern Florida. I don't know why I selected the highlighter there. It almost looks like we have a separate low-pressure system that's going to dive through the southern peninsula, and then we have our bona fide, maybe baroclinic, weak baroclinic system developing over the upper Gulf coastline of the Panhandle in southern Alabama, Mississippi. So very interesting setup here. You really can't draw fronts with it. There's a little bit what looks to be surface ridging back behind it, and then we have this massive Bermuda high out over to the east of it. So, is there a potential for severe weather? Absolutely. Could we see some strong storms with this? Of course, because we have a synoptic trigger, very wonderful shortwave trough at 500 millibars, and some cooler air out there. But in terms of where we're going to get an abundance of moisture or an unstable conveyor out ahead of this, it's still up in the air. That's why if you guys have noticed on my YouTube shorts, and if you follow me on Instagram and TikTok, I haven't really been mentioning severe weather, tornadoes, etc., or heavy rainfall, because there's a huge discontinuity still between the models. Models yesterday, and there goes the highlighter again, models yesterday wanted to pile drive Tampa Bay, move right across the Florida Peninsula. Now today, models have it all the way to the north. And it doesn't look like much looking at the entire CONUS shot here, but that is a marked difference in terms of where our severe weather potential could be, where our heaviest rainfall could potentially be, where any kind of cold advection, warm advection would occur, where our unstable sector, our severe weather sector, as I like to say, could establish itself, and then eventually this thing booms off the coast, and look at that. The thing becomes a very, very, very weird amalgamation of multiple low vortices inside of it, and this has been the trend on the European model for a while. You get almost 3 embedded vortices in here, 1, 2, and then 3. This area in particular is what's giving us some very strange signals. And then look at this heavy precip band to the north here. It's a very strange system. This is very strange. It's not your textbook low pressure, let alone El Nino system. This definitely doesn't look like a classic El Nino system. This is almost something else. And I don't mean that to alarm anybody. It's very interesting to see what's shaking out, especially since it goes stationary for a while out there and more or less lingers right over top Bermuda. Bermuda could see some elevated winds and some very heavy rainfall with it just in time for our next system to balloon up and start headed up towards the Great Lakes, the Midwest. Still exploring whether or not this is going to be a big severe weather maker. Again, we're just not in a very, very favorable setup right now. If you guys think about it, earlier when spring had arrived, we had warm temps all through here. We had a very, very good subtropical ridge over the eastern half of the United States, really good warm advection across the south and the central portions of CONUS. Now, if you think about it, because of this cold shot that I can actually feel still coming through my window, it's a beautiful thing. Now, because of this cold shot, the entire eastern and lower half of the United States has to reset. So we're not going to have all that ample convective available potential energy, that warm advection. We're not going to have tremendous dew points or relative humidity. We'll still have moisture, of course, but if I were to switch over to the Cape immediately, and I'll just do that right here. I was going to save it for another chart, but if I switch over to the Cape, notice the difference. See how the Cape really doesn't do a whole lot? I mean, it tries to come up, but if you look at the timing on this, this is already Saturday at 18Z. So our storm system is actually going to be out ahead of it. So all of our major activity is going to be displaced downstream of it. It's really going to be very out of phase. And that's why I was mentioning, if this system tracks further to the south, we're just going to see rain and wind. If it tracks further to the north, we could possibly see a little bit more of this instability, more of this buoyancy get sucked out of the Caribbean and back to the north. So to be determined, we'll see. And then it's a matter of it meshing together if it does. Same thing with that next storm system. You fast forward and notice there really isn't a whole lot with it. There's really no cape out there. Maybe some very, very subtle indications out there over the plains, but right now, because of the fact that we had this polar plunge over the eastern U.S., it's kind of zapped us of our spring setup. So we got to wait a little bit to re-intensify that and get our spring setup back in business for more severe weather. I know a lot of people don't want that, but, over the next several days, I'm really not investigating much in terms of severe weather. What I'm really looking at, and we'll just go ahead and fast forward because I'm excited, I'm looking at this. This has been trending on our charts for a little while now. And I'm not going to lie to you guys. When I pulled this up for this brief, the little meteorologist inside of me, the extreme weatherman inside of me was like, I know this chart. And pretty soon these things are going to be crazy off the chain when we get further into June, July, August, and so on. But believe it or not, we're not even looking at tropical depression probabilities. These are tropical storm probabilities. And believe it or not, we have a 20% signal here off the west coast of Florida. Very, very interesting. And the only reason I bring this up is because right in through here, if I were to switch on over to our sea surface temps, notice how warm the Gulf of Mexico has gotten. The Gulf of Mexico has been really warming up, guys. And even though we have a tremendous amount of El Nino wind shear out there, take a look at this. We actually have temperatures out there in the ocean with enough moisture to technically, you could stand on a pedestal and make an argument that we could see some kind of cyclonic development out there. It's right there in black and white. The only problem is we just have the wind shear from El Nino, but it doesn't tell us that we can't have any subtropical characteristics carried by this system. So that's kind of why I'm very interested, very excited to see what happens. And even the Gulf Stream, as you ride the current up towards the mid-Atlantic, we still have about 26, 25 degrees Charlie in there. But yeah, look at how this portion of 27 degrees Charlie is working its way into the eastern central Gulf of Mexico pretty favorably. And it lines up really well with what we see in terms of our signals here, especially at the 96-hour point. If I were to draw this out, there's our favorable temps, and it's going to wander right over top of that. So very cool to see. Very cool. Am I sounding the alarm and saying Tropical Storm Vince? No, I'm not. But am I saying that we have to start exploring the possibility that we could have some early arrivals in the hurricane season? Definitely. I think I posted it on my Instagram, and the caption was, with these probabilities, I'd wrote, is it possible? No. Is it doable? Definitely. And what I mean by that is it possible that we will see a tropical cyclone or a subtropical cyclone form up? The probabilities are fairly low. Let's be real here. We still have El Nino in play. We just had a cold blast come through, so it's not really the most favorable environment for a well-stacked warm core system to make its way through. But is it doable? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You look over here, I believe I have our ensemble cyclones pulled up, or the cyclone ensemble pulled up. Maybe I don't. I'll go ahead and go back to that here in a second. Here is our control MSLP from the Euro. We always got to go to our ensembles, and you take a look, and you can see we are expecting a little something to form out there. And what's interesting is, even on the European ensembles, if you look, this is our main area that could spur up some pretty significant weather. But look at this down in through here. There's other indications of low pressure, so I'd almost argue that we'll have to look for something embedded in the pattern in the low levels, trying to sneak its way under the radar and intensify whatever kind of shower and storm coverage we have over the peninsula. Because as you take it just a couple panels further through time, 84, 90, 96, now notice we have just a very, very elongated area of low pressure up to the north. All this down here in the south has been absorbed and moving up towards the northern Florida peninsula. But very, very interesting that we're getting these kind of mixed signals from our models, especially this early. And it's not impossible. We've had tropical systems out there in the month of March. We had one in January. So it's not like what we're exploring here is entirely out of the realm of possibility. One of my favorite models here, guys, you were very familiar with this when we were during the hurricane season of last year. And you look, we have some ensemble members, those classic spaghetti lines moving across the Gulf. Right there. Nothing super extravagant, but if you notice, the models are also here. The ensemble is thinking that there are two separate entities here. There's a little bit of a clustering of the ensemble members through there, and then there's a little bit of clustering of ensemble members through here. And if you notice, that first one moves in to South Florida, and the second one moves into northern Florida. It's very interesting, like very interesting. People are thinking that there's, just one natural subtropical jet-induced system here, but I would argue that there are very, very small whispers that there could be an embedded cyclone within our actual storm system that we need to watch. So, I don't know. You guys tell me. It's very interesting, the puzzle pieces that are coming together, and I still can't believe the probabilities. The tropical storm probabilities are there. The tropical depression probabilities are there, and I believe that if I were to open up the parameter a little bit or open up the margin of error, you'll see it a little bit better. There you go, down in the Gulf. And originally there were some signals off the coastline that it could pop up. I think at 0Z they had some signals, off the coast. Yesterday at 12 Zulu we had even greater signals, surprisingly. I haven't seen this much shading on these charts in a long time, especially that close to home. Almost had an Ophelia 2.0 right there. Very interesting to see those little whispers on the models. But anyways, here's our total precip, since I know a lot of folks have been asking on the talk and on YouTube. This is what we're looking at currently. And don't be misconstrued or confused when you see the models are, opening up gaps in the precip field, opening up gaps in the moisture. That's going to happen because it's trying to get the entire configuration of the low nailed down. As you can see, again, this is the ensemble blend here, the blend of models thinking that this system's going to take a bit more of a northerly track. And as such, we get a lot more of the heavier rainfall through the southern and central half of the peninsula. And this is why I mean, if this system tracks further to the south, or if we have just a singular system come through more to the north, it's really going to determine where our strongest stuff forms, where our heaviest wind impacts are, and where our heaviest rainfall falls. Because you notice, north of the storm, we really don't get very much. Just some showers, maybe approaching an inch and a half, nothing to write home about. But then in the southern half of the peninsula, we're pushing 3.5, almost 4 inches of rain. Braden, by the way, Braden WC, I haven't been ignoring you, buddy. I'm just trying to get through the brief and discussion for you, but shout out to Braden's WC. Very big fan of the Weather Center, and I do genuinely appreciate all you guys' support. Braden, I genuinely love all the kind words and the messages that you've sent me and the comments you've left on the YouTube channel. Means a lot, definitely means a tremendous amount. They don't go unnoticed, that's for certain, and I promise I haven't been ignoring you, buddy, just, breaking things down for the viewers. So that's going to be the kicker, really, is going to be the development, where it sets itself up, and when it decides to pummel its way through the Central Florida Peninsula. It's coming. It's definitely coming. It's on all of our models. I have the GFS pulled up here. This is our 18 Zulu GFS. We'll take it quickly through time, and there you go. Cyclogenesis over the Gulf of Mexico. This actually looks a little bit more sinister, too, which is very interesting. This definitely looks a little bit stronger than what the 12 Zulu had in it. But again, if you switch over to surface-based Cape, the Cape just really doesn't come along with it. It's lagging behind. It's kind of getting pulled in at the last second, because if you remember, the same thing we saw during the hurricane season, whenever Lee was out there and then Margot moved to the north, and as such, Nigel followed to the north. What's his name? What was the, trying to think. Sean followed to the north because those lows carved out low pressure in between all of our high pressure. And that's kind of more or less what this system's doing. We have our modified polar high that just slowly drifts off to the east, and as this low develops, it's going to try to chisel out a region of path of least resistance for it to travel through east-northeast. And because of that, since everything is getting pulled in back behind it, as our low escapes off in this direction, the buoyancy is going to be behind it. So we're really not going to get a whole lot in terms of good, conducive ingredients for severe weather. Will they be there? 100%. Like I said, I'm exploring the severe weather potential, but it's on the low end for me personally, just based off of what we're seeing. We do have the shear component, obviously, because this storm is definitely going to be ballooning up. You look at that, and we have a decent shear component out of the south. It's trying to establish itself, and you move over to our temperature advection, and you do get a little bit of warm advection. Nice little low-level jet trying to satisfy itself, but again, very, very weak cold behind it, modest warm advection behind it. So I don't know. The verdict is still out in terms of whether or not we're going to get severe weather with this. The Icon model does a phenomenal job of showing it as well. We'll go back to 12 Zulu so we can look at it. 12Z go through time. See, and this is what I was talking about. This is exactly what I'm talking about here. We have a front up through here, and then we have our modifying air mass right down in through here. And you could already see that low sneaking its way across the Mexico terrain, getting ready to unveil itself in the plains of Texas. And you take it a little bit further through time. There you go. Right there. She's starting to undergo cyclogenesis, coming in. There it is, starts to develop, and notice that if I were to erase the lines and draw again, we still have modifying high pressure out here. There's still cold temps down here. There's 570 line is way down to the south. 564 line is barely edging its way into the Central Florida Peninsula, and our low is entrained right underneath our subtropical jet, right in through here. Our polar front jet is way to the north, so this is definitely induced by our El Nino jet, that's for sure. And you take this just a little bit further in time, and you see, here we go, really, really solid push of moisture across the southeast United States. And all of our models are slowly but surely starting to instigate this northerly push. And I do think if we get this northerly track like this, as I'd mentioned previously, and I'll kind of draw it out for you guys. I'll go back in time a little bit. There we go, perfect. So if the low were to track down here, and we had a low here, our severe weather sector would be down in through this quadrant here, like the southeast quadrant of it. So South Florida, Miss Leah, if you're still watching in there, you would probably have to deal with any kind of significant, if not severe weather with this. Now, if we were to draw the same box here with our low undergoing genesis over Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, our severe sector would be much further to the north, kind of like this. And you could see this encompasses a much larger landmass because we're in the more favorable sector of this storm to produce strong, if not severe, thunderstorms. But we'll see. We will see. If it does take on subtropical characteristics, we might not see a whole lot of severe. Because believe it or not, when you think about it, in tropical systems, let alone subtropical systems, the biggest threat is going to be the tornado action. We're not going to see a lot of hail. We're not going to see a lot of convective winds. We will see non-convective, not associated with thunderstorms, strong winds, but remember, we also have to make sure we're paying close attention to the characteristics of this low when it forms, because that's going to change the rhythm. If it does take on a little bit more of a baroclinic, unstable wave fashion, we will have a more likely threat of convective winds, maybe a potential for hail and isolated tornadoes. If it does try to pick up subtropical characteristics, our tornado threat is likely to go up. Just telling you right now, it'll still maybe be on the lower end because this isn't really an extravagant low-pressure system. It's not the worst thing that we've seen, but it'll definitely pack a punch. It's not like it's not going to do anything, and that's why I've been watching it very closely over the last several days now. Canadian model picking up what everybody else is putting down, also tracking it almost in the very same similar fashion of the Euro, the GFS, the Icon, kind of getting little faint whispers of a frontal boundary right in through here. It looks like in the pressure troughing with a bit warm advection right through there. And again, right there, this little bit of synoptic analysis paints the picture for you perfectly. I'll change the color of the ink here, and I'll go red, and you look right in through here, it's fair game for any kind of severe, I'll say strong thunderstorms. I won't say severe, just because it doesn't look like the buoyancy and the instability is going to be readily available like some of our previous systems, but anywhere in here is fair play for some stronger stuff that'll definitely do a little bit more than just drizzle on you. All right, let's see. What's next? I brought up the GFS members for our Cape, so we can take a look at what the GFS is thinking. And all of the models notice that our low is going to move through before the Cape can actually catch up to it. It's all going to be displaced back behind it. Even the control model has the low moving way to the north. The control member has it all the way up towards almost the southern border of Tennessee, moving towards south of North Carolina, with, again, our buoyancy lagging back behind it. Take a look at some of these other model members here. You have the Cape way back behind it. This one here, the E8 member, actually has like a textbook severe weather event. There's your sector of negative, or not negative energy, but your sector of energy associated with the buoyancy with this system, and that would track right over top Florida and help to provide us with some stronger stuff. But, you know, the models, if you guys you can't tell here, they're doing a very bad job with it. They're having a hard time identifying what this thing's even going to turn into. I mean, you look at the difference in just, like, we'll say the control member and, I don't know, we'll pick and choose one. You look down here at E24. And you have a low here, and then up here you have a low up here. Very dramatic difference. You take a look at, we'll say, E5. Bingo, E5. Anybody have E5? And you take a look down at, we'll say, E27. Difference in between this, difference between that. So our models are definitely struggling. They're definitely struggling. It's very interesting to see exactly what this does and how it shakes out. And we'll know, unfortunately, dare I say, we'll know more by the time we get to end of the day tomorrow and then Thursday for our next live stream. So I think our Thursday live stream is going to be a little bit more exciting than this one. So for my folks in there, we have 97 people. I was going to say 91. We have 97 people watching right now. If you want to come back and talk more, Thursday night I do believe is going to be a lot more exciting than this one. That's for sure. Let's see. Let me go over to some College of DuPage so we can take a little bit of a closer scrutiny of our severe weather dynamics, because I do love some of the parameters that they have on here. And we'll actually use the continental U.S. to take a look at this. We'll go down to the surface and we'll take a look at our good old Theta E. Theta E, I feel like, is a champion in identifying where it is our severe weather sector could be in association with these storms. And you look, and this is exactly, again, this does a perfect job. For you guys, it might look like jargon or just fancy fair psychedelic colors. But if you look, there's our low center. Here's a very weak warm front, very weak cold front draped back in through the southern periphery of the low, right through there. And if you notice, our area conducive of very volatile severe weather is going to be right here. I should probably use a different ink. Let me use a different ink. Let me go black. Will black work? There we go. If we were to get severe weather, it looks like it'll be down in through here. So SoFlo, southern Florida, central Florida maybe, but in this current iteration, a lot of that buoyancy, a lot of that warm, unstable maritime tropical air lags behind it. And you can see it. Our low is deepening down up through here, the mid-Atlantic regions. By this point in the chart, this is 6Z Saturday. So as we're getting into very early Saturday morning, the worst has technically already passed. And all of our buoyancy is still back down in through here in the Gulf, maybe approaching the Keys, southern Florida. And even then, it looks like we still remain fairly modified and dry over central Florida. You come on over to the dew point. Dew point kind of tells the same story. We get a little bit of that resurgence. We're out ahead of that system, but by the time a lot of the dew points can catch up to it, we're already back behind it. And then if you come over to our convective products, we'll go to the supercell parameters, for example. I haven't looked at this today, so this could be a surprise for all of us, but you look, and again, back behind it, and they kind of taper off. Southern Florida, again. Southern half of the Florida, for sure. Southern half of the Florida Peninsula. I do agree with this. We could see that severe weather sector try to form itself up from the Fort Myers, Boca Raton area and further to the south, the bottom one-third of the Florida Peninsula. If we were going to see severe weather, that is where I would anticipate it would be. Helicity is not the most impressive. Let's go to our EHI, Energy Helicity Index. EHI, South Florida, showing it for South Florida again. And then we get a little bit of re-intensification over the Gulf Stream waters off the East Coast. I'll take you in for a closer look, and we'll kind of map it out. Southeast U.S., and even without pulling it up on the chart, with this low tracking to the north like so, and with that buoyancy and that unstable layer lagging back behind it, this bottom one-third of the peninsula here, I believe, is going to have our greatest risk. And I believe Storm Prediction Center, if they're going to designate this, is probably going to have a level 1, if not maybe a low-end level 2 slight risk for just the bottom half of the peninsula. At least if I was there operating the desk, that's where I would slap it. And in fact, I'd probably put it there in the next 24 hours just to be on the safe side, because it looks like our models are slowly zeroing in on a pattern here. Somewhere up in through here is going to see this low track through. And if that's the case, all that stuff down to the south is going to get drawn up, and that one-third of the peninsula is definitely very, very likely of getting nailed by something. At least moderate level impacts, some stronger winds, localized heavy rainfall, some lightning, possibly some rotating storms. Because of the fact as well, we're not going to be as unstable. We're not going to have as robust and powerful updrafts. I do think the hail threat is going to be a little lower on this as well. We can explore it. Let me see if any of our models go out far enough to where we can take a look and see what our preliminary thoughts are on the models. Surface hail. Nope, only HRRR, so that's not going to do us any good. Let's take a look. What else can we use to possibly identify if we're going to see hail? I'm trying to think on my feet very quickly. Can't think of anything, and I don't want to try looking at our forecast soundings this far out because they might still be a little lopsided. They might still be a little off. So we're in a holding pattern. We definitely know we're going to see some serious weather with it. That's for sure. Yeah, I can guarantee that. Well, definitely, this is not going to be just an ordinary walk in the park, a daytime shower, or heavy rain dousing, and then we're done. This will be a little bit of an extended event, and we can go ahead and just for the fun of it, start taking a look at some of our other anomalies associated with this. We'll go back to the Euro, we'll go down to the southeast United States, and we'll take a look at what our wind gusts could be at the surface. As you take it through time, let's see. So yeah, there you go. Look at that. It looks like you can now take this with a grain of salt, as they always say, because I've noticed in just the last 3 to 4 months, looking at these parameters, they tend to be over forecast. It seems like almost every single time these models tend to over forecast it. But I want to raise awareness to the fact that the European model has the low tracking up through here, but notice we have this conglomeration of stronger winds down to the south, so maybe the Euro is trying to hint at that secondary embedded vortice that we were talking about. Ignacio, excellent question. Will it be as strong as a winter storm in January? No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. We're not looking at a tornado outbreak or anything substantial. Now, granted, of course, there's always that 1% chance that this does go up and the threats do increase. We'll know a little bit more, like I'd said, by the end of the day tomorrow and into Thursday for our next live stream. So I would definitely advocate you come on in for that. We're going to have another discussion. We'll have a little bit more information to go over. We'll be closer in time. We'll have a better understanding of where it's going to track, where our significant to severe impacts likely to be, and a better idea of where our heaviest rainfall are going to be falling in association with this, because I do anticipate we're still going to wobble back and forth, especially looking at the ensembles. Alberto could be coming. Am I confident? No, I'm not confident. Definitely not confident. And CWTDF, excellent question, man. I want to go out and chase. I'm willing to exhaust myself and go out there and chase. It's really going to depend on the timing, because unfortunately I have too many things going on to take a day off from work, and I also have drill weekend this weekend with the Navy, so I will not be available throughout the day on Saturday or Sunday. So perhaps I can try to catch either the early phase of this, get out there and try to do some coverage, the early phases of it, or catch the back end of it, because we're looking at the Euro here, and it looks like it'll try to start popping itself up very early Friday morning. Very early Friday morning, if this pans out. I've noticed that the models have been very back and forth as well in terms of timing. Sometimes I've noticed I've woken up in the morning, checked the overnight models, and they want us to come in at 6 to 12 Zulu, which would be an overnight event. Now I'm noticing the models are slowly leaning back towards an afternoon, late in the day event. Now, as you can see, the current iteration here actually has this storm moving through and almost taking its time over South Florida, and it could be here overnight Saturday, so who knows? Maybe overnight Saturday we can get out there and do some stuff depending on what the radar looks like and what shakes out with this storm. To be determined is what I'm saying, in layman's terms without over-exaggerating, to be determined. But yeah, guys, that's kind of going to wrap it up. That's kind of going to wrap up the live stream. I know I usually go for an hour, but I have some other things to do in the background, and got to eat dinner. I am starving, definitely starving. That's why I keep chugging water every couple seconds while we're on the stream. So, if anything, we'll do about another 5 more minutes. And then we'll go ahead and start cutting the stream, because I also want to put together some even greater information to discuss with you guys on Thursday, since Thursday will be a lot more concrete than where we are now. Right now, as you can see, it's not that we don't know what's going to happen. It's just a very anomalous and a very dynamic system that we're looking at here. It is subtropical El Nino driven, but there are indications of some tropical, subtropical characteristics. We actually have a favorable environment down in the low levels. The water temps are conducive, technically, I'm using that word very frivolously, technically are conducive for tropical development. So, very, very strange, very interesting to see what happens here. It'll be very interesting. So if you guys are watching tonight and you like what you see, please tune back in on Thursday. We will definitely be live for the full hour. We'll be talking for sure, discussing and diagnosing exactly where this is going to go. I have some questions popping in the chat. Braden's WC, do you think we could have any tornadoes? I do think there is going to be a tornado threat. It might be just one of those 2 percentiles. We will see. I do think, though, if this does take on subtropical characteristics or not, we do have a threat for tornadoes. Very low-end threat. It'll predominantly be stuck to the bottom sector of Florida. Because right now I'm really not seeing the dynamics or the ingredients coming up further than that. I do think the bottom 1/3 of the Florida Peninsula is where we're really going to have to pay close attention to. Brooke Ward, just want to say thank you again for the coverage you did over the tornadoes in Ohio. My brother's county, just north of my daughter's, is under a state of emergency now from the damage. Wow, shoot. What a shame, but at the same time, you're very, very welcome. It was an absolute pleasure getting in here, getting in the trenches with everybody, and covering all that severe weather activity as we possibly could. And we're definitely going to do it again. That's not going to be the last time things like that happened up there and then down in our neck of the woods. We have a lot more to dig into and a lot more to prepare for, which, by the way, another reason I have not put out any videos on this channel is because, again, I'm trying to stay away from that for the time being. I don't want to just do routine updates. I'm working on a video segment specifically for the hurricane season and not necessarily just hype in forecast. No, I'm trying to put together an informational video for the Caribbean, for our Bahamas, for the Cayman Islands, for Puerto Rico, for everybody out there who's going to be in harm's way this hurricane season, as well as us Floridians and the rest of the Southeast and the Gulf of Mexico coastline. So be on the lookout for that. I'm still toying around with the idea of releasing some sort of a podcast, and we're going to continue to roll out the shorts as well. And PM, to answer your question, oh yeah, I'm working out every day. Well, almost every day. I try to, at least 5 times a week, if not 6 if I have the availability. But yes, to answer your question, what else we got going on in the chat? All Floridians need to be ready for hurricane season. We should know what hurricanes do to us. Steven, I absolutely agree. I've been looking at a lot of the posts on the X, and some of the models are definitely sounding the alarms. They're taking 2020 and making it look like this. Let's put it that way. Somebody, I forget his name. I really want to remember his name, and I know that Mark Sudduth on Hurricane Track follows him religiously, and they collaborate and they talk all the time, but he put together a blend of Euro, UK, etc. climatological models, and then he did a side-by-side comparison to what was forecasted for 2020. We all know 2020 was a blockbuster hurricane season. He put a side-by-side comparison of 2020 versus 24, and let's just say it makes 2020 look like nothing happened. In fact, you know what? I'm going to try to look that up. Let me see if I can remember what his name was, just so I can show you guys. I can't remember if I saved it on my phone or if I just saved it on X. Let me see if his name pops up. If it doesn't pop up in the next 30 seconds while I'm talking to you guys, and I'm just going to forget about it. If it does, though, I'm more than welcome, or I'm more than... There we go. Okay, so Ben Knoll. Ben Knoll is his name. I kept wanting to say something else, but Ben Knoll. There we go. Let's see. Ben Knoll... Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it. Let's see if it'll let me pull this up. Let's see. Of course, it's not going to let me see. Weather Center Nazario. See if I remember my password the first time. I always use different iterations of my password. There we go. So I'll go ahead and save this. So check this out. Let's see, where is it? I know it was just recently posted. Let's pick it up. Pull it up. Where you at? Okay, this might not be it. This must be a different post here. That's not the same Ben Knoll. Let me go ahead and go back to my home, and let's see, where are we at? Let's see. I do follow him. Let's just go up here and take a look. This will be how we end the stream. Here we go, Ben Knoll weather. So check this out. This is very, very, very concerning. If this isn't an alarm sign for you guys, then I don't know what is. Let me see. Where is the blend that he put together? Let me double check. Here we go. Look at that. That is insanity. Insanity. If that doesn't tell you it's time to start at least preliminarily preparing, at least having some sort of a mental strategy, then I don't know what else there is to tell you. Because that is insanity. I really want to find where the side-by-side is, though. I want to find the side-by-side so I can show you guys. And I can't find it right now. Ben Knoll. I'm going to try to find it one more time. And if I can't find it, we're going to end the live stream. But regardless, I just want to leave you guys on this note because there is definitely a lot more to talk about. Let's see if I can find it. Do I have to keep scrolling? Is that what it is? Maybe I need to keep scrolling down on his page, and then we'll find it. Hi, mamas. All right, I can't find it. But anyways, this was the composite of the UK Met overlaid with the Euro. This is like a blend of climatological models. And if you look, MDR is going to be crazy off the chain. Caribbean is going to be crazy off the chain. And then this just screams 2004 vibes. Look at that. It looks like West Florida is really going to have to watch for an Ian/Charlie 2.0. We're definitely going to have to watch this very closely. And he even says it right over here from Ben Knoll. Let me go ahead and scroll on over, and then we'll end the live stream, guys. There's been a strong and consistent signal for well above normal rainfall across the Atlantic during the hurricane season. The Caribbean and Gulf of Mexico look particularly favored for tropical activity. Disclaimer, while precise track forecasts are not possible months in advance, the guidance here indicates that storms may have a tendency to track westward toward land, rather than curving out to sea. Hurricane season is less than 3 months away. Now is the time to prepare. And I'm fully on board with that. I mean, you just look at this, and that tells the picture. That tells the puzzle, 110%. So we're going to go ahead and end the live stream right then and there. Oh, and look at that. He actually tagged Mark Sudduth in there, Hurricane Track. I just noticed that. So there you go, guys. More to come on the tropics. We're getting close. By the time we get to April 1st, we're really going to start digging in. I've been looking at a ton of the meteorologists out there and how they typically go into the hurricane season, whether it be preseason, during season, and postseason. And a lot of the big names out there do suggest and agree that April 1st is the countdown. If we get a picture like this on April 1st, it is more or less time to batten down the hatches and start really taking things serious. Because usually our climatological models are a little iffy when you're looking at December, January, and so on. But when you're 60 days away, if not minus 60 days away, because we could have an early arrival from the hurricane season, we're almost more or less locked in. So we're going to, when we get to our live stream for April 1st, and I promise, guys, I might do an April 1st gag on a short or something like that, but anything we talk about, we're not going to be doing like April Fools, doing this, and that, so we'll definitely keep it for real. We might do a separate live stream or a separate video for April Fools, but to be determined. So definitely hit that subscribe button, like and share this content, follow the page, at least by April 1st. Please come on back. I have been feverishly studying everything out there. The correlation of the Indian Ocean Dipole, the PDO, the NAO, the AEW, the AEJ. I've been studying everything out there. Our Enzo oscillations, not only here, but also the North Atlantic oscillation. The North Atlantic, I forget the name of it, but there is a ton of stuff I'm looking at. How the Indian Ocean monsoon affects tropical cyclone activity, how the NAO affects steering currents, how the PDO affects steering currents over the North Atlantic and over the North Pacific and over North America. I've been studying the Enzos and the strengths of La Nina and the characteristics that will typically exhibit on our patterns over the localized Caribbean. I have a ton of stuff I'm researching. And I want to try to go to a hurricane conference next week that's happening, but it's not looking too favorable. More on that later, but yeah, guys, that's going to do it for the live stream. Thank you very much for the turnout we had tonight. It looks like we had a bit more viewers than normally, and I definitely thank you guys for that. It's been an awesome conversation, albeit a little bit shorter-lived. Definitely going to be coming back to you guys on Thursday evening at 8 p.m. with a lot more information, a lot more sensible information as well in terms of what's going to be happening down here as we get into the weekend and early next week, as well as a look towards the back end of the month, since we will be approaching the last week and a half, I believe, of March, which is insane to say. Be on the lookout for more routine shorts. I'm going to be starting to lean on the YouTube shorts a little bit more when I can't put out the main content on this video channel, or on this channel, I should say. And also continue to watch for the bigger videos that will be encompassing the hurricane season, tropical preparedness, and so on and so forth, because I really want to put those out. That's kind of like my main concern. I definitely want the YouTube Shorts to be our intermittent updates, especially when there isn't anything huge to talk about. And I want to continue these live streams to kind of backfill or supplement the shorts. And then I really want to save, at least for now, over the next 30 days, I want to start pumping out preparedness and tropical content to just get everybody on the same page, start bringing back some of our old viewers from in the Caribbean, Central America, the Bahamas, the Cayman Islands, and so on. So we will see. Yes, I have. How close are we? That's another thing I've been looking at in the background. I've been doing lots of studying on thumbnails, so hopefully those will also start to improve. But thank you all very much for being such a wonderful audience tonight. You guys are always a pleasure to talk to and conversate with. I do apologize for cutting the stream now 15 minutes short, so we're still kind of getting the full, ish length of the segment. But definitely tune back in on Thursday, 8 p.m., March 21st. We're going to have a lot more to talk about. We're going to rock for the full hour, so you definitely do not want to miss that. And I hope you all have a great rest of your evening, great rest of your Tuesday, awesome hump day tomorrow. Stay positive, stay happy, stay safe out there, guys, and we'll talk to you again very soon. Until then, you know the phrase. This is Weather Center Nazario, signing out.